In light of Don Lemon and Georgia Fort getting arrested, and the fact that Don Lemon said he knew this was likely coming, after all, a Bush-appointed judge had declined to sign off on charges before, and he said he knew that the weaponized DOJ was going to find a way to try and arrest him and to get him in court and try and put him in prison. Because fascists don't stop, right? You stop them once and they'll keep coming, and it's up to us to continue to be vigilant and hold the line. It's not one and done with fascists, unfortunately. We have to have tenacity and endurance, longevity, because they'll keep trying until we stop them. In light of that, I thought that this would be a good time to read a section from one of my favorite books, Blueprint for Revolution, which is about the OTPOR movement in Serbia and a number of other nonviolent revolutionary movements. They have a really good section on getting arrested and going to jail. And I know that a lot of us who are organizing for the first time, many of us have never been to prison, and it can feel really, really scary. And the regime knows that. They use jail, arrest, charges, prison as a way to intimidate you, as a way to scare you out of exercising your rights. As I read this, I want you to think about how the way the regime is indiscriminately arresting American citizens in particular is backfiring on them spectacularly. But as we learned in Serbia, the best way to overcome the fear of the unknown is with knowledge. From the earliest days of OTPOR, one of the most effective tools the police had against us was the threat of arrest. Notice, I didn't say arrest, I said the threat of arrest. The threat was much more effective than the thing itself, because before we actually started getting arrested by Milosevic's police, we didn't know what jails were like. And because people are normally much more afraid of the unknown, we imagined Milosevic's prisons to be the worst kind of hell, a Serbian version of the Sarlacc pit in Star Wars, only slightly less terrifying. But then, when things started getting heated, a lot more of us actually were arrested, and when we got back, we told others all about it. We left out none of the details. We wrote down and shared with our fellow revolutionaries every bit of what happened in the jails. We wanted those about to be arrested themselves. We knew there were bound to be many, many more of us picked up by the dictator's goons to understand every step of what was going to happen to them. First, you'd be handcuffed, and one handcuff would be locked much tighter than the other, so one of your wrists would feel like it was going to explode. Then we alerted our male friends that they were likely to find themselves in a small cell with thugs and drunk drivers who would be puking all over the cell, and our female friends that they were likely to spend a few hours in close quarters with prostitutes. Everything would smell like vomit and piss. Your belt would be taken and your pants would fall down, embarrassing you further. Since they also took your shoelaces and now your sneakers hardly fit, you'd be walking around with awkward, clumsy steps. Then everyone would be taken for fingerprints and sent off to interrogation rooms where, just like in bad television shows, there's a good cop and a bad cop. The first offers you coffee and a smoke, the second yells and bangs on the table. Both asked you exactly the same questions. Who is OTPOR's leader? How is OTPOR organized? Where does OTPOR get its money? OTPOR is a leaderless movement, we told people to say, and OTPOR is organized in every single neighborhood. And OTPOR is financed by the Serbian diaspora and ordinary people who want us to live in freedom. When the table banging began, all you had to do was remember those 3 lines. The whole thing was a lot like being in a high school play, and it always followed the same predictable pattern. We called our preparations for being arrested Plan B, and it worked wonders. Soon, instead of speaking of prison in hushed tones, our friends and acquaintances spoke of it dismissively, even humorously. They knew what to look forward to. Being in prison was still scary, sure, but it was much less scary than the dark things we used to imagine before we had gained experience and started educating one another. And we covered for each other too. If the police actually got one of us, we all had legal documents signed and ready, giving a few lawyers sympathetic to our cause power of attorney for us. Finally, we had elaborate phone lists in place so that if any of us got arrested, there was always someone notifying parents and friends and loved ones. And of course, there were piles of pre-made press releases sitting on top of desks and tables ready to be sent out to the media seconds after shit went down, with only the names of the activists and the addresses of the jail left blank and waiting to be filled in by us. Plan B worked wonders because it blunted the dictator's means of oppression and helped us turn the tide of fear. Obviously, we knew that even with Plan B, we couldn't control what Milosevic was going to do to us, and everybody understood that at some point there were going to be casualties. It was a given that some of our people would lose their jobs, some of them would be sentenced to long prison terms, and some might even be tortured or killed. but the way we dealt with this was by giving each case the human attention it deserved. We in OTPOR reminded ourselves that each member of our group was an individual with a family and responsibilities. We were sworn like American soldiers to leave no man behind, and trained ourselves to endure the worst. Soon, people were willing to take incredible risks because they knew that as soon as Milosevic's guys slapped the handcuffs on them, there would be an entire movement working behind the scenes to set them free. That's what solidarity means. That's what solidarity means, and the kind of courage that it can give people. With Plan B, the fear of the unknown melted away. Getting arrested soon meant that you joined the exclusive club and that you wouldn't be facing the full weight of the security forces all by yourself. Not only that, but once we stopped being scared and started getting organized, the police realized that the harder they cracked down on us, the worse it got for them. Their oppression was backfiring. Think of the situation from their point of view. You're in Serbia, you're a police officer, you've joined the force to protect and serve and arrest the bad guys. But now you're being told to interrogate 10 young students from this organization called OTPOR. I know you might listen to what's next and think, well, DHS agents are far more brutal and inhumane than OTPOR police. Just listen, it's still relevant. And also spend some time reading up on the OTPOR movement and what the police were like during it. You begin by asking the kids a list of questions you've been handed, and the arrestees give you the same absolutely useless answers you've heard 100 times before. From outside the window of the police station, you hear about 50 people in front of your station singing pop songs and chanting the names of the kids that you're interrogating. And you can see that the crowd gathered in front of the precinct is handing out flowers and cookies to every single policeman who walks by. Parents and lawyers of the arrested kids are also crowding the corridors of your building and tying up the phone lines with their calls, making it difficult for your colleagues to concentrate on real criminal investigations. Every 3 seconds, it seems, a polite retired grandparent, maybe your neighbor from the apartment across the hall, asks in a soft voice, "Why are you beating our wonderful children?" At this point, it would be hard to say who's under siege by all of these arrests, OTPOR or the police. Now imagine the scene when the arrested kids are finally let go. Upon stepping out on the street, these kids are greeted by throngs of adoring fans shouting at the top of their lungs, hooting, whistling, applauding, sort of like Don Lemon's reception when he was released from jail today. We called it the rock star reception tactic, and it worked beautifully. Before long, being arrested made you sexy, even if you were a pale and pimply nerd. The clever members of Milosevic's inner circle were able to grasp what was going on. In May 2000, we heard serious rumors that the head of Serbia's secret police had submitted a report to the government stating that oppression was only making things worse for the regime and that each arrested OTPOR member was causing 20 more people to join the movement. But the dictator wouldn't listen. Milosevic and his wife, the one with the flower in her hair, demanded more arrests. And that was exactly what OTPOR wanted. Since getting arrested was now like the coolest thing you could do for your social life, OTPOR decided to capitalize on this marketing bonanza. We printed up 3 different colored t-shirts with the OTPOR fist on them, each color representing how many times its wearer had been arrested. Within weeks, the black t-shirts with a fist in a white circle became the hottest fashion item in Belgrade, cooler than anything either Abercrombie or Prada could design. This was the 1990s, after all. That's because the black t-shirt was given to people who'd been arrested more than 10 times. All of this was a tremendous boost for OTPOR, but it still only got us halfway to where we needed to be. We understood fear and the nature of oppression, we'd learned everything we could about the mechanics of oppression, and we'd succeeded in making oppression seem like nothing more than a minor and acceptable risk. Just part of our job. Now we had to develop strategies to overcome oppression. And that's where we're at right now in the US. We are building and developing our strategies to overcome oppression while we also recruit more people into the pro-democracy movement. Remember what Sarah just said at the beginning of this section. The best way to overcome fear of the unknown is with knowledge. If you're scared right now, a great place to start is getting plugged in with your local grassroots organizing. Connect with folks who've been arrested, who've been doing this work for a long time, and also read about other successful nonviolent resistance movements around the world, the strategies that they utilized and what it took for them to stop the dictator in their country and restore or for the first time implement democracy. The 2 books that I think are the best intro for folks are Blueprint for Revolution by Sergej Popovic and This is an Uprising by Paul and Mark Engel. But I've got a whole library if you'd like other recommendations, and I just got my next book on my reading list, A Paradise Built in Hell by Rebecca Solnit. Looking forward to reading this and sharing some of it with you.